Hey, what is going on, Guardians? TBL here, back bringing you guys another very quick kind of Destiny 2 news video. First things first, we are just a few weeks away from not only the Destiny 2 PC beta, that's coming in just, I think, about a week and a half now, but also the full game is less than a month away. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. And this weekend, if you've been paying attention, it's been chock full of some Destiny 2 news, and we've got a lot to cover, and we're going to go over it fairly quickly throughout this video. Now, if you paid attention to any of your favorite Destiny news channels, or if you watched the PD podcast, it was a great episode, you should go back and check it out. We talked a little bit about some of the things we're going to be covering in today's video, but most of this information is coming out of Edge Magazine issue 310, with a cover story featuring Destiny 2. And there was an absolute ton of information in this article. You know, Edge Magazine, they've been doing features on Destiny, the same as Game Informer and some other outlets out there that just gives us all kinds of info, and it was no different this time around. We learned quite a few interesting bits of information concerning nightfalls, in-game content, patrols, the way weapons are going to work, cooldowns, just all kinds of stuff that we're going to try to delve as much into as we can over the course of this video. Now, first things first, Nightfalls. This is one of the few things that struck out to me most. Nightfall strikes will now have a time limit that's going to vary by strike. This article was speaking with several individuals from Bungie, namely Luke Smith, and he gave the example of a Nightfall strike having a time limit of about 13 minutes, which, based on the strike we got in the Destiny 2 beta, I couldn't imagine beating that in 13 minutes. So this might be a fairly strict timer on these things. So of course, efficiency and settling on an overall team strategy beforehand is going to be important. Nightfall's having a time limit. We don't really know what exactly happens at the end of that time limit. We don't know if you're sent back to orbit or if you're just simply sent back to the very start of the strike. Remember, we kind of have time limits in Nightfalls right now, but it doesn't really penalize you for not completing the strike within the time limit. The only thing that happens is you won't get gold, so you won't be able to complete the Sunrise Bounty. That's about the only thing Nightfalls do right now. So knowing that they have some sort of time limit in Destiny 2 where you have to complete the strike before that time limit runs out, whew, if you weren't sweating already from some of the strikes in Destiny 2, this one might make you perspirate just a little bit. And of course, this also ties in with something else the article talked about, which was limiting loadouts. Certain in-game activities are going to limit your loadout. Once you load into that mission, you will not be able to change your weapon and armor setups until you've completed the mission. And I do believe they mentioned Nightfalls as possibly being one of the activities that could have this sort of modifier. Now, they didn't say that all Nightfalls are going to have it, so it could just be kind of like a special modifier for certain weeks or just for certain activities. But thinking about that mixed in with the time limit for Nightfalls, that could definitely create some very difficult bits of content for in-game. Moving on from that, they talked a bit about story progression and the overall amount of missions we're going to have in Destiny 2. They stated that there's over 80 story missions and PvE activities, and each is substantial in length, challenge, story, and reward. And beyond that, there's around 50 or so cutscenes we're going to be going through throughout the story of Destiny 2. And I gotta say, 80 story missions, 50 cutscenes, let me count this up. That might be a little bit more than what we got for vanilla Destiny, certainly. And it actually might be equal to or more than what we got throughout Destiny's entire history with all the DLC added in. So very good first start here for Destiny. Now, of course, some of those PvE activities might be something as simple as a patrol mission. They might be including that into the numbers here to pad things out. But having 80 missions, I think that's a pretty good start for where we're going. And they actually went on to talk a bit about how the amount of content they shoved into the game has made a bit of trouble for them when it comes to progression. They stated that there's so much new content that at one point in development they realized that they had more content than progression, which is something they've subsequently fixed, but that's a pretty good problem to have when you've got so much content in a game that you don't really know how to scale it out to match the in-game leveling progression, to ensure that you're always the right level for the amount of content that you're doing. So good to see they did a bit of rebalancing there, and again, just a good problem to have too much stuff for people to play. Now after that, they brought up the notion of supers and grenades and ability cooldowns, and they mentioned some things we've basically already heard before, but just reiterating that they felt some of those abilities were recharging a little bit on the slow side too, so when people played the beta and basically made those same criticisms, it kind of reinforced the decisions they wanted to make either way. And so those recharge rates have been tuned and are a bit faster than they were in the beta, but they still want to encourage people to recharge them manually. If you remember in Destiny 1, our ability cooldowns are mainly tied to our stats, basically how much intellect, how much discipline you have. And then you can sort of bolster those cooldowns with some of the abilities that come inherently on armor. Well, some of that's going to be different in Destiny 2. They stated that they wanted you to take a more active role in getting your abilities back. So yes, ability cooldowns have been tuned so that you're going to be able to get them back faster. But just like in Destiny 1, your classes will have certain abilities, and armor might come with certain abilities that help you to get those cooldowns back a little bit quicker. They mentioned the Dawnblade class has a certain perk where getting kills in midair helps to recharge your abilities faster, which of course synchronizes really well with the Dawnblade class since the jump is very floaty and it's meant to emphasize you being an in-air target that's able to get a vantage point on enemies, but also it's a bit of a sitting duck, so you kind of have to play that back and forth. And I'm okay with that. You know, it's definitely a change going from Destiny 1 where all of my grenades are on like a 20-25 second cooldown that I can make even faster by doing stuff, to not really having a stat-based system like that in Destiny 2. But as long as we're able to speed up those cooldowns by actively taking actions and stuff like getting kills and dropping grenades on people, that's a good way to handle it. And when it comes to Warlocks at least, they spoke specifically about an ability that Warlocks have to kind of devour their grenades so they can charge it up, hit enemies, and then it's going to work very similar to the Vampire Voidwalker build from Destiny 1, you know, with like Embrace the Void and all of those abilities that help you get your cooldowns faster if you land hits. And you'll be able to charge up your grenades, charge up your abilities, and landing blows on enemies or killing them is going to charge your cooldown almost instantaneously. Can't wait to see how that's going to work out. Now after that, they talked about quite a few things, but one in particular I wanted to mention was kind of a reiteration of something they spoke about before, which was the farm and the vendors and NPCs you'll find there. No longer will you be buying weapons and armor from the people in the social space. It's all gonna come in the form of like package drops. So stuff from quests and stuff from faction packages is how you're gonna be able to get your gear in Destiny 2. And personally, I like the sound of that because any sort of questing is definitely right up my alley. And of course, your story missions will generally be starting from some of those social spaces. They talked a bit about the story, but I'm not going to get into any of the spoilery stuff there. Just know that after the events of the Homecoming mission, you'll wake up in the European Dead Zone, the largest area Bungie's ever designed, and you're not going to have any powers for a while. That should be an interesting survival experience. Now beyond that, they mentioned a few things about exotics and the fact that you're going to be able to get an exotic over the course of the story, maybe even around midway through it. Now this has kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. Some people didn't really like the fact that an exotic was tied to story missions. I don't really understand that. I think the more exotics, the better, and if they're tied to experiences within the story or outside the story, I think it's all good. If you remember during the beta, during the Homecoming mission, you get an exotic from the first mission. I thought that was a really cool way to kind of just get people their first real exotic weapon experience. You know, it doesn't have to be something super overpowered. Like, they're not going to give away a Yallarhorn level weapon just during a basic story mission. Or who knows, maybe they are. But I think, yeah, just putting one in some of the quests throughout the story, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Oh, and speaking of the European Dead Zone, we got a little bit more information about how patrols and missions and patrol events and whatnot are going to work. First off, you know we have the milestone menu, which is kind of like a mission tracking page that you can bring up. It'll always show your next actual story mission objective and anything else you've got set up for tracking at that moment. But they talked a bit about patrol missions, and we're going to be able to manually trigger some of those. I thought that was rather interesting. Most patrol missions are going to work the way they do in Destiny 1, where they're just on a timer and they'll randomly spawn throughout the world. But some of them you'll be able to manually activate by hitting a flag, and upon activation it's going to restore your super and then start up, I guess, a juiced up version of a patrol mission. And if you remember, they also spoke about the ability to change modifiers or kind of change the difficulty of some missions like this. You can turn a basic patrol into like a heroic patrol by doing something in particular. I don't know about you guys, but that gets me excited. I love the way patrol is set up, and it's meant to evoke a sense of exploration, which unfortunately was a little bit limited in Destiny 1 based on the small zones that we had. And that looks like that's definitely not going to be the case with Destiny 2, with these massive open world spaces just packed to the brim with stuff for you to find. And I can't wait to get on out there. Now, moving on from there was one thing in particular that really caught my eye in this interview, and it was something that the Edge magazine individuals had to say. They got to play Destiny 2 for a little over 2 days. They got to go through the entire story and play a ton of the content, including PvP, and they stated that they remain unconvinced about the 4v4 nature of PvP. Just in between the dynamics of the way it handles with team makeup and the overall reliance upon team shooting. And they actually got a response from Mark Noseworthy basically stating that the power of team shooting and the focus on that is definitely no mistake. That is how they want to push things forward with the Crucible moving into Destiny 2. And he continued that this notion of team shooting is key to Destiny 2's design. That every subsystem within Destiny 2's PvP is built upon the idea of team cohesion. And that's why stuff like scoring and the scoreboard at the end of matches has been changed. Which just kind of nails home again the fact that the Bungie devs, they want you to focus on team shooting when it comes to PvP. And I just thought that it was a really interesting moment, a bit of dichotomy between the Edge magazine people who were saying, they weren't really feeling PvP just yet, and then the Bungie devs responding to that. But I'm not going to get into a spiel of that right now. I just thought it was a really interesting exchange. But alright Guardians, that's pretty much it for everything that I can remember from this Edge magazine interview. There was so much information just poured into there that there's really no way for me to cover it all in one video. But that was just some of the stuff that I thought was most interesting and most important. Be sure to let us know what you all think of all this stuff down in the comment section below. And are you excited for Destiny 2? We're less than a month away, baby. But alright, if you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like and even subscribe if you'd like to see some more. But anyways, I'm out for now. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, I am TheBlackLink. You Guardians, stay frosty.